Hello and welcome to the Astrology Forecast. My name is Sage. Here is your eye into the sky, letting you know what the cosmic events are for the week, why they matter, and how you can use this information in your everyday life. I hope that everybody enjoyed a wonderful holiday with either friends or family or both. I know for Shane and myself, we did not get a chance to make it up to New York to see family because we were just there. So we actually had a really great Friendsgiving down here in Florida. It was really awesome. Super grateful for all of the people that joined in our space. So I hope the same for you and your family as well. It is Black Friday weekend, and as many of you who follow me on Instagram know, I am doing a pretty big offering for this weekend. I am offering 50% off of any reading I have available. So that includes birth chart readings, solar return chart readings, couples chart readings, and also monthly forecast readings if you would like to know what's coming up for you in the month of December, or maybe there's another month coming up in the next, future that you're like, yeah, I want to know about that one in particular. Go ahead and book that. Like I said, it is 50% off. I do not do this very often, so definitely take advantage of that now. That will be in effect until Monday the 27th. So if you're listening to this, hopefully you're listening to this on either Sunday or Monday. You got to snag that deal. So again, thank you all for, tuning in as always. I love the feedback that I get from these forecasts, and just to hear how you're able to use this information to really equip yourself and know what to expect, in the week, in the month, even in the year. I just love hearing about that. So thank you all for being so consistent and for tuning in and for being so supportive of that. Again, if you have gotten value from these videos, please make sure you hit the like button. That really does help out these videos, and we want to make sure as many people as possible can get this information. And again, if you haven't already done so, because I know it's easy to just watch these videos, and I do it myself, I forget to subscribe. So please hit that subscribe button. It would really mean a lot to me. And if you're tired of just happening to get my notification on Instagram, or maybe you're just scrolling through YouTube and you see my forecast pop up, you can just hit the notification bell, and then you'll just know when a forecast has been posted for the week. That way you can stay up to date. So would love if you guys would do all of those things. And this week we have only really one major cosmic event. We do have something that I'm going to discuss towards the end that involves Mercury retrograde. Dun dun dun. That is coming up in December, but we are beginning to feel the feels now. So definitely stay tuned till the end of the forecast for that. But the majority of this forecast is going to be talking about the energy of Monday, November 27th. This is the day that we have a full moon in Gemini. So all things full moon, let's dive right in. First question is, what's a full moon, right? So let's just do a quick refresher. A full moon is when the moon and the sun are on two opposite sides of the earth and they are in opposing signs. So right now we are in Sagittarius season. Happy solar return to all my Sages out there. So the sun is in Sagittarius. Now the opposite sign, or the opposing or sister sign to Sagittarius, is Gemini. And so the moon is entering into Gemini literally tonight. I'm recording this Sunday morning, so tonight. And it will be exactly opposite the sun tomorrow, Monday 27th. If you're listening to this, excuse me, later in the week, that's okay too. This is a great opportunity to reflect, think about what happened for you, and just be able to maybe, unpack some of the energy, some of the situations that did unfold. But again, if you're listening to this, hopefully before Monday or on Monday, then take note. So full moon in Gemini. So again, knowing that a full moon involves both the moon and the sun, it's important to get a good idea about how these two signs interact. Like, what is the relationship? What do they each stand for? And how is it that the sun being in Sagittarius and the moon being in Gemini, what is that energy showing up as for us down here on Earth? So sun in Sagittarius, I did a lot of discussion on this during the All About Sag forecast, so definitely go back and listen to that. But sun in Sagittarius is, of course, the big energy, the big thinker, the one that wants to explore the world, right? Sagittarius is like the professor, the guru, the guide. This is the one that wants to really maximize and expand on what it knows and really take everything that's, normally maybe more earthly in form and really expand this throughout the universe. This is a much more universally minded sign. Now, Gemini is opposite to Sagittarius. These are both yang energies, okay, meaning they're both more extroverted energy, air and fire, but they are different elements. Sagittarius is mutable fire, whereas Gemini is mutable air. Now, that word I just said at the beginning of each element is the word mutable. Mutable means changeable, it means adaptable and flexible. These are the season ending signs, right? Sagittarius ends the autumn leading into the winter, and Gemini ends the spring going into the summer. And so mutable does give us a degree of flexibility, but again, different elements. So Gemini is, of course, opposite to Sagittarius, whereas Sagittarius is the big thinker, the one that looks at theory and philosophy and like larger belief systems. Gemini is all about collecting that raw data. Gemini is the student, whereas Sagittarius is the philosopher. There's a difference here in the sense that Gemini wants to collect information, it's curious. There's a buzzing quality to Gemini that can't sit still. There's certainly a restlessness here with both signs, right? Sag and Gemini. So if you're feeling like you need to move during the full moon, that's to be expected. The energy is high and it's active. But with Gemini, the moon being in Gemini, this is really calling on us to look at things in an intellectual way. And these things are going to involve our emotions because the moon is our subconscious. The moon is all about how we feel, whereas the sun is how we show up, it's who we are. It's that I am principle that drives all of us. The moon is that feeling nature. The moon is not just who I am, but it's how I feel. And sometimes, as we know, these are very different things. We can be one way, but we might feel a totally another way, especially because, as we know, our emotions are always changing. Hence why the moon is always changing sign, it's always changing phases, it's never staying the same. Neither are our emotions, right? So, again, the moon being in Gemini is going to mean that our emotions are being basically filtered by this mutable air quality. This is air that's constantly moving, right? This is, again, mutability, it's change, it's adaptable. So it's not structured, it's not one direction, it's all directions. Both Gemini and Sagittarius have a free spirit. And I say free spirit because both of these signs want to explore their environment. It's just that Gemini wants to explore the local environment, collect all of the pieces of information. The function of Gemini is much more about understanding the individual entities of something, like the pieces that make up the whole, whereas Sagittarius is more about seeing that bigger picture and seeing the whole picture, and therefore wanting to explore beyond perhaps its local environment. And so, with the moon being in Gemini, our emotions, we're thinking about them. We're really looking to understand and maybe see how everything in our emotional, vibrational atmosphere is adding up, if that even makes sense. But just know that Gemini energy, it wants to understand the reason behind something. But Sagittarius, the sun in Sag, is the other energy acting upon us during this full moon. And it's saying, don't just look to understand what you feel, but understand why you feel that. What is it that makes you feel that way? And let's go deeper. Let's not just look at the basics, but let's really expand and explore this. And so a lot can come up for us, especially because this is a much more logically focused energy. Gemini is like the translator. And usually we don't have our emotions translated. Usually we just feel them and then eventually they pass. But when the moon is in Gemini, we're thinking about them, we're talking about them, we're much more curious to understand them. And of course, that Sagittarius energy is expanding upon this and making it into a much more, I would say, larger than life energy, which is bringing our emotions out of us. And that's what full moons are here for, right? This is the culmination, the peak of the lunar cycle. This is when the sun is illuminating all of its bright rays onto the moon, which is essentially our emotional being, right? Our subconscious mind. And it's illuminating that. It's bringing all those things that typically live underneath the surface within us, right? Emotions that we don't often talk about. All of a sudden, during a full moon, we find ourselves talking about them. We might not realize it's because of the full moon, but at the same time, we are getting acted upon by these celestial energies, and therefore we're receiving feedback from our local environment about how this is showing up for us. So situations might unfold where suddenly you have to express how you feel to somebody. You have to have a conversation about what that emotion means and how in the larger picture that can translate over to either a change you need to make, an upgrade you need to have, right? Maybe some I don't know, differences need to be sorted through in order for you to really come to a greater understanding. And so this is what the full moon is doing for us. Now, on top of the moon being in Gemini and the sun being in Sagittarius, we have our lovely friend Mars, which is in the sign of Sagittarius, happens to be very close to the sun, and therefore it is also opposing this moon. Now, Mars is at the same time in square with Saturn and Pisces. Now, understand that Mars and Saturn together, this is a very intense energy. These are both the malefic planets. They bring a lot of maybe frustration, especially because of this relationship being formed, and just a lot to sort through. So on top of that, Mars is also squaring Saturn. Now, Mars square Saturn is a very tense relationship. This conversation between these two planets is getting heated because Mars is all about action taking and progress and direct forward motion, while Saturn is chilling in Pisces saying, we need to put some structure here. We need some boundaries, especially in whatever area of your life you have Pisces. There's not a lot of boundary there. Pisces is the sign of boundlessness. So Saturn is doing the work to say we need boundaries, while it's talking to Mars saying slow down. And so how might this show up, right? How can you actually see where this energy might come alive for you? It could be that you have a project, something that you've been working towards, something that you feel emotionally drawn to. And suddenly during this full moon, you find yourself talking about it and thinking about it. But then you also realize that maybe there's some conflict there that has to be sorted out. And also, you might have to put in the work. Saturn's the planet of hard work. Saturn is acting upon Mars and saying, slow down, put some structure behind what it is that you're doing. If you want to take action, if you want to have a long term goal met, you need to make sure you have your ducks in order. And so, this is the time to get your ducks in order. This is not the time, Sagittarius, to expand yourself so thin that you don't really get anywhere. You don't get any depth, any substance. And this is something that we might come across with the moon being in Gemini, because Gemini tends to like to be a jack of all trades. Gemini doesn't necessarily go deep on one topic versus it would much rather know a lot about a lot of topics, or sorry, a little about a lot of topics versus a lot about one topic. Sagittarius would much rather know a lot about one topic. So Mars being in Sagittarius, we're like, yes, I want to learn, I want to go deep. But now we're getting pulled by the moon in Gemini, and of course Saturn is just slowing down this whole entire experience for us, really making sure that we set proper boundaries, that we actually create a foundation upon which we can expand from, right? It's like the springboard. And Saturn is acting as that springboard for our dreams, for our goals, which is exactly what this full moon is bringing into light for us. The moon is translating our emotions, right? That's the Gemini translator. It's collecting that raw data. And then the sun is allowing us to see how we feel and then work with that energy. With Mars being in Sagittarius, we're doing something about it, just as long as we create some structure, says Saturn, and make sure that we aren't moving too quickly, that we're just kind of bleeding out everywhere, right? And just, again, spreading ourselves too thin and not necessarily creating the structure that's required here. So these are some really important key things to take note of during the full moon. Again, if you're listening to this later on into the week, think back on what situations unfolded for you. I would also recommend knowing where you have both Gemini and Sagittarius in your birth chart, as that'll give you a lot of clarity about where this full moon energy was showing up for you. I did also mention Saturn being in Pisces. Again, knowing your birth chart, knowing where Pisces is. Saturn's in Pisces for the next couple of years. So that's a really interesting thing to take note of and to be aware of, because that's an area of life that you might be finding yourself having to put more work into, create more structure and boundary. And it might also feel like an area of life that suddenly gets a bit more frustrating or slow. You're like, why aren't things moving faster in this area of my life? Saturn could be the answer. So if you're not sure if that's true for you, definitely go ahead and book a reading. I promise you the answers are in your birth chart. So a couple last things about this week. We have officially entered into the Mercury retrograde pre-shadow. Mercury will go retrograde on December 12th. This is also the day that we have a new moon, which is actually great because that will be the culmination of this current lunar cycle that we're in. All of the things that we're talking about while the moon is in Gemini right now, all the situations coming up, we're going to see them playing out these next couple of weeks, ending out this lunar cycle. By the time that new moon in Sagittarius happens on December 12th, we might see kind of a wrap up here. While at the same time, Mercury is going retrograde that day. Again, more on that when we get to that week. But Mercury going retrograde in 2 weeks actually means that we have entered into the pre-shadow right now. So a lot of the topics that we're talking about right now, we will actually find ourselves more than likely revisiting these same topics at the end of December, going into the beginning half of January. So pay attention to what situations are unfolding in your life, what conversations you're having, what is your mind thinking about, what are you looking to understand more, what have you been learning about or teaching about. Again, these are the topics that are more than likely going to rear their ugly head one more time. For better or worse, they are going to come back around come the end of December, literally like the 29th, 28th, 29th, 30th, all the way through like the second week of January. We're really going to see a lot of what's going on now coming back up, revisiting. Again, that's the retrograde energy, right? We're revisiting a lot of what's going on. So just something to pay attention to. If you are someone that takes notes on these forecasts, take down the notes of what's going on in your life, because you might find that you have to talk about it again towards the end of this year. So, with that being said, I know this is a heavier week as full moon weeks tend to bring a lot to the surface. We might still be feeling this energy of the full moon going into the middle of the week. So, again, if you've been feeling the feels, it is okay. That is to be expected. But don't just let it be felt and then not really be thought through. Again, that's what this moon is asking you to do. Don't just feel it, but really investigate, really look at what it is, why it is, and how you can work with this energy. So I hope this information was of value to you. Next week, stay tuned. We will be discussing Venus. She is moving signs. So lots to look forward to there. If you are a Libra rising, make sure that you do take advantage of Venus still being in your first house. And again, like I always say, get behind the camera, do something more aesthetic, because you will thank yourself later. So, with that being said, I send you all so much love. Thank you as always for tuning in. If you got value from this video, please make sure you hit that like button. And again, I will see you all next week.